The psychology of self-awareness, unlocking the layers within you. What if everything you believed about yourself wasn't the whole truth? What if the way you feel, act, and think is shaped by hidden forces within? In this video, we dive deep into the unseen layers of the mind, where old patterns, silent wounds, and forgotten truths reside. This is not just about knowledge, it's about coming face to face with yourself. Through the lens of Jungian psychology and the path of individuation, we explore how to stop performing life and start living it, with intention, awareness, and inner clarity. If you've ever felt like you're not fully you, this journey is for you. Stay with us. What you're about to discover isn't just content, it's a mirror. What will remain of you when there is no mask left to wear? Have you ever wondered who you truly are when no one is watching, when no roles are left to play, and when the last mask slips off? Most of us grow up performing for love, approval, safety. But in doing so, we slowly forget the difference between what is true and what is expected. We call ourselves me, but that me is often a carefully edited version designed to survive, to be accepted. So, what happens when life no longer lets you perform? When failure, heartbreak, or loss tears through your identity, revealing the raw, unpolished version of you. That moment is terrifying, but also sacred. Because in that moment, something deeper begins to stir. A quiet voice that doesn't seek applause, only truth. The journey of knowing yourself doesn't begin in confidence, it begins in collapse. In losing what never truly belonged to you. And maybe, just maybe, that's how we finally begin. Not by becoming someone better, but by no longer pretending to be someone we're not. Are you ready to meet yourself, without the armor? When the self is built from the world's expectations. From the moment we're born, we're handed a script. Be a good child. Be smart. Be strong. Don't cry. Make them proud. One by one, those expectations become bricks in the walls of our identity. And before we even realize it, the person we call me is shaped more by the world than by any true sense of self. This constructed identity, the one that pleases, performs, adapts, is often rewarded. You're seen as successful, stable, admired. But inside, a quiet ache begins to grow. You start to wonder. Who am I outside of their approval? Would I still matter if I stopped meeting expectations? The truth is painful. Many of us live for a self that was never really ours. And it's not your fault. Survive. Often requires fitting in. But healing begins when you see that fitting in is not the same as belonging. When you realize that the role you've perfected may be the very thing keeping you from connection, with others, and with yourself. The real question is not, who should I be, but, who am I when I stop becoming what they want? And that, perhaps, is where the real you has been waiting all along. What we deny silently controls us from within. We all have parts of ourselves we'd rather not see, impulses we suppress, emotions we label as, too much. Desires we pretend don't exist. These aspects don't vanish just because we push them away. In fact, the more we reject them, the more power they gain. This is the nature of the shadow. According to Jung, the shadow is not evil, it's simply the part of us we refuse to accept. And like anything banished, it finds other ways to return. A sudden rage that surprises you. A destructive decision you swear you didn't mean. A judgment of someone else that, deep down, feels too personal. These are moments when the shadow leaks through. The irony is that what we condemn in others is often what we deny in ourselves. But the shadow doesn't want to harm you, it wants to be seen. Not to dominate, but to integrate. To remind you that wholeness doesn't come from perfection, but from acceptance. You don't need to be free of your darkness to be real. You only need to stop pretending it doesn't exist. Healing begins when you stop battling parts of yourself. And start listening. The anger, the envy, the fear, they're not your enemies. They're messengers. Until they are heard, they will keep knocking, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet. But always persistent. The question is, will you finally open the door? We deceive ourselves to avoid facing the truth. We like to think we know ourselves. We build stories around who we are. What we want, what we've been through. But often, those stories are not reflections, they're shields. Shields that protect us from truths we aren't ready to face. It's easier to say, I had no choice, than to admit, I was afraid to choose. It's more comfortable to believe, people always hurt me, than to ask, why do I keep returning to the same pain? These are not lies. They are defense mechanisms, subtle, silent strategies that our mind uses to preserve our current identity. They keep us safe. But they also keep us stuck. Jung called this the resistance to individuation, the fear of dismantling the fouls. Self we've grown attached to. Because underneath our defenses lies a more unsettling truth, we may be the ones sabotaging our own lives. Not out of malice, but out of fear. The fear of uncertainty. The fear of change. The fear of what we might see if we looked too closely. But growth only begins when the fear of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. Self-awareness isn't just about insight, it's about courage. The courage to ask, what am I not seeing, and even more, why am I avoiding it? We deceive ourselves not because we're weak, but because, at some point, it felt safer to not know. But the truth has a way of returning. Quiet at first, then louder. Until one day. It's the only voice you can't ignore. Each person within us wants something different. We often speak of ourselves as if we're one single, unified being. I want this, I feel that. I've made my choice. But if you've ever felt conflicted, torn between staying and leaving, between speaking and staying silent, you've already met the truth, we are not one voice. But many. Inside each of us are different selves, each with their own fears, desires, and needs. One seeks safety. Another craves freedom. One longs to be seen. Another prefers to disappear. These inner parts are not your enemies. They are your history. Formed by experience. Shaped by trauma, built by survival. And when they fight, it's not chaos, it's communication. It's your system trying to tell you something, that part of you wants change. But another part fears what that change might cost. We label this inner tension as weakness, indecision, or instability. But what if it's intelligence? What if holding these contradictions is a sign of deep awareness? Your inner conflict isn't proof you're broken, it's proof you're alive. Healing doesn't come from silencing parts of you, but from learning how to listen to them all. The self is not a monologue. It's a dialogue. And real strength comes not from picking a side, but from creating space for every voice inside you to speak, and be heard. The invisible mechanisms that drive the mind. Most of what drives us happens beneath the surface. We think we act from free will, but often we are following patterns, habits, inherited instincts. Jung described the psyche as a system made of 4 core functions: thinking, feeling, sensation, and intuition. Each of us has a dominant function, one that shapes how we process reality. The thinker analyzes, seeking logic. The feeler values connection, weighing choices by their emotional impact. The sensor notices details, grounded in the present. The intuitive sees possibilities, sensing what hasn't yet appeared. But we are not taught to honor our function. We're told to be more rational or stop overthinking. We suppress what doesn't fit and exalt what does. Over time, Our inner compass becomes distorted. We over-rely on what feels safe and neglect what feels foreign. But healing requires balance. Wholeness means learning to trust the parts we've ignored. If you've always been a thinker, ask, what am I feeling, right now? If you're intuitive, try, what am I missing in this moment? Each function is a voice of wisdom. No one is better than the others, they only offer different ways of seeing. Real self-understanding begins when we stop forcing our selves into one mold, and start exploring how our mind truly works. Your psyche is not your enemy. It's a map. And when you stop resisting how you were designed, you might finally learn how to lead yourself. When the part we neglect rises during a crisis, there's a part of you you've left behind. Not out of cruelty, but necessity. Maybe it didn't feel useful. Maybe it got you in trouble. Maybe someone taught you to silence it. Over time, you learn to operate without it, to rely only on your strengths. Your safe zone. Jung called this the inferior function, the part of your psyche you've ignored, suppressed, or never truly developed. It hides in the background, often unconscious. But in moments of stress, breakdown, or emotional overload, it emerges, not gracefully, but forcefully. A rational person suddenly breaks down in tears. An emotional person turns cold. A visionary loses all focus. These aren't failures, they're signals. Your psyche is asking for balance. What we repress doesn't disappear. It waits. And when the system becomes unstable, it speaks. Not to destroy, but to demand wholeness. You might be proud of being strong, logical, dependable, but are you also in touch with your vulnerability, your spontaneity, your depth? Healing doesn't mean becoming perfect, it means becoming complete. To truly evolve, you must face the parts you've avoided. Listen to the voice you've ignored. Give space to what once felt threatening. Because the function you reject often holds the wisdom you lack. And the crisis you fear might just be the invitation you need to become whole. Returning to wholeness. The path of individuation. Real change doesn't come from becoming someone else. It comes from becoming fully who you already are. This is the essence of individuation, a lifelong process Carl Jung ribbed as the journey toward psychological wholeness. It's not about self-improvement. It's about self-integration. Piece by piece, you reclaim what you once rejected, the emotions you buried, the desires you were taught to fear, the strengths you forgot you had. Individuation asks you to confront your shadow, to question your persona, to meet the archetypes that live inside you. It's not a path of comfort, it's a path of inner honesty. And unlike a career or a goal, individuation has no finish line. You don't graduate from it. You live it. Every breakdown, every turning point, every deep reflection is part of it. The more you walk this path, the less you need to be someone. You realize, I don't have to prove my worth, I just have to return to it. Healing is not about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what's always been whole. Individuation is not a path for the perfect. It's a path for the brave. For those who dare to ask, who am I beneath the layers? Who am I when I stop trying to be what others need? Who am I when I simply allow myself to be? Inner archetypes that quietly shape our lives. Within us live ancient patterns, forces older than memory, yet deeply personal. Jung called them archetypes. Universal images and instincts that shape how we see, feel, and relate. They're not characters we invent, but energies we inherit. The nurturing mother. The wounded child. The wise elder. The rebel. The lover. The destroyer. Each of these archetypes speaks a language older than words. They rise in our dreams, in our stories, in our relationships. And though we may not name them, we live them. The problem begins when one archetype dominates while others are silenced. You become the caretaker who never receives, the warrior who never rests, the thinker who forgets how to feel. We're taught to idolize certain roles and deny others. But wholeness comes not from perfecting one side, but from embracing them all. The animus in women, the anima in men, these inner opposites challenge us to balance logic with emotion, strength with softness. When we unconsciously project these archetypes onto others, we expect them to complete what feels missing in us. But no one can carry the weight of what we haven't claimed for ourselves. True growth begins when we stop projecting and start integrating, when we stop asking others to be our missing piece and begin becoming that piece ourselves. Archetypes are not fiction. They are fragments of your truth, waiting to be owned. Knowing is not enough. You must dare to live differently. Awareness is powerful, but without action, it changes nothing. You can read every book, uncover every pattern, name every wound, but if your behavior stays the same, so will your life. The mind is clever. It can trick you into thinking that insight is transformation, that understanding your past is enough to free you from it. But knowing why you're stuck doesn't mean you're moving. Many people stay trapped in reflection, mistaking it for growth. But reflection without risk becomes a cage, comfortable but confining. Real healing begins when you take a different step, however small. When you say no where you used to say yes. When you pause instead of reacting. When you leave a situation that no longer reflects your worth. The nervous system may scream. The fear may rise. But every act of newness creates a crack in the old self. Insight opens the door. But only courage walks through it. You don't need to be fearless, you need to be honest. Honest enough to say, I know better now, and I will act like I do. Change is not a moment of revelation, it's a choice you make again and again. Until the new way becomes real. Until your actions catch up with your awareness. Until your truth is no longer hidden in thought, but alive in how you live. Self-discovery isn't about perfection, but about freedom. Many pursue self-discovery like a project, with goals, timelines, and the hope of reaching some perfect version of themselves. But the truth is, the self isn't something you conquer. It's something you learn to befriend. Growth isn't linear. You don't wake up one day and become whole. Instead, you return to yourself again and again, through failure, forgiveness, fear, and courage. The path isn't polished. It's raw, messy, and deeply human. You may outgrow identities that once kept you safe. You may grieve the loss of who you thought you were. But that grief is sacred, it marks the death of who you're not. And the birth of who you truly are. Freedom isn't found in control or perfection. It's found in truth. In allowing yourself to be seen without armor. In making peace with your contradictions. In honor. The parts of you that don't fit anyone's mold. To be free is not to be flawless. It's to be real. And realness means you will disappoint some people. You will let go of roles. You will speak truth. That make others uncomfortable. But you will breathe easier. You will sleep deeper. And most of all, you will no longer be performing a life, you'll be living one. Self-discovery is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. And in that remembering, you become whole. Don't let misconceptions about psychology block your healing. Psychology was never meant to label you. It was meant to liberate you. Yet so many people still fear it, as if seeking to understand your self means you're broken. As if going to therapy means you've failed. These beliefs don't come from truth. They come from discomfort. Because it's easier to judge what we don't understand than to add me. We might need help too. Society often romanticizes physical healing, scars, surgeries, recoveries, but stigmatizes emotional healing. As if pain of the mind is weakness. But the psyche is part of the body. And healing it is no less real. No less valid. You wouldn't shame someone for healing a broken bone. Why shame someone for healing a broken trust? A broken boundary, a broken sense of self. Psychology isn't a diagnosis, it's a language. A way to make sense of what's been silent. It teaches you that your patterns are not your identity. That your trauma is not your destiny, and that emotions are not enemies but signals. To embrace psychology is to reclaim your right to grow. To feel. To evolve. Healing isn't linear. And it isn't always visible, but it is real. And the courage to step into that process doesn't make you weak. It makes you awake. The more we normalize mental health, the more we free ourselves from shame. Because asking for help is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. And understanding your mind is not overthinking, it's remembering how to come home to yourself. Control isn't about strength, but awareness in the midst of emotion. We often confuse control with suppression. We think being strong means never breaking, never crying. Never feeling too much. But real control has nothing to do with force. It's not about pushing your feelings down, it's about knowing where they come from and choosing how to respond. True emotional moss. Terry isn't coldness. It's clarity. It's standing in the middle of chaos and still being able to hear your inner voice. It's letting the wave of anger rise without letting it destroy everything in its path. It's recognizing fear without letting it make decisions for you. This kind of control requires awareness. Not armor. You don't have to numb yourself to be okay. You just have to slow down enough to notice what's really happening. Emotional awareness is not weakness, it's wisdom. Because when you can name what you feel, you reclaim the power to decide what comes next. And when you stop running from discomfort, you begin to see that your emotions aren't here to trap you, they're here to teach you. Anger shows you what matters. Sadness shows you what needs care. Anxiety shows you what feels unsafe. Every feeling is data. Not a verdict, not a command, just information. The more you listen, the less they have to scream. And in that quiet, you'll find not only strength, but choice. Control, then, is not domination of the self. It's cooperation with it. A kind of inner leadership where nothing inside you gets silenced, but everything gets seen. Meaning isn't found at the destination, but in how you walk each day. We are taught to chase meaning like it's a prize at the end of a long road. As if once we achieve enough, become enough, prove enough, we will finally feel whole. But meaning isn't waiting at the finish line. It's found in how we choose to live along the way. It's in the honesty of your conversations. The intention behind your choices, the quiet way you show up for yourself when no one else does. It's in the patience you offer when you're tired, the courage you find when afraid, the small, silent moments of alignment when your inner world matches the outer one. Meaning isn't about making life perfect. It's about making it real. Alive. Felt. Even in your confusion. Even in your pain. Especially in the moments when things don't make sense, because those are often the moments that call us back to what matters. You may not have all the answers. You may still be healing. But if you're walking with awareness, with presence, with heart, then you're already on the path. Meaning grows where attention lives. And when you give attention to your breath, to your truth, to your small, conscious acts, you plant seeds of meaning. The point isn't to arrive somewhere impressive. It's to arrive fully where you already are. Because life doesn't reward those who run fastest. It opens to th. Those who learn how to be here, with both feet, with both eyes, with both hands open. The journey home isn't out there, it's within. In the end, the greatest journey is not the one that takes you across the world, but the one that takes you back to yourself. Not to the self that was shaped by fear, by approval, by performance, but to the self that was always there. Beneath the noise. You are not here to become someone else. You are here to remember. To unlearn what never belonged to you. To walk through your shadows, reclaim your voice. And finally live a life that feels like yours. Healing is not about fixing yourself, it's about making space for all of you to exist. With tenderness. With truth. With courage. If you've made it this far, it means something in you is ready. Ready to stop running. Ready to stop pretending. Ready to come home. And that home has always been within you.